2 days before the Pacific Coast Charity Classic. A $3 million engine died in front of 20 cameras, a dozen investors, and one billionaire who needed the win like air. Out by the fence, a skinny kid with a beat-up backpack and a dog with one good eye was listening harder than any of them. Be honest. Have you ever watched a room full of experts miss the one truth a nobody could hear? That nobody was me. I'm Jada 16 on paper, older everywhere else, raised in a one-bay shop where my dad taught me the only rule I still believe in. Listen first, touch second, talk last. Miles Brooks was his name, and when a jack stand failed, the system failed harder. And then it was couches, bus depots, and nights counting ceiling stains in places that smelled like bleach and regret. My dog Rusty, torn ear superhero nose, learned to sleep with one paw on my boot so he'd know if I slipped. Engines were the one constant, the one language I could still speak without apologizing. You know what I mean? Bayford sits where the ocean meets diesel and money that never calls you back. Colton Reeves owned the team, the car, the cameras, the story. The whole glittering circus sleeves rolled just so, jaw like a movie poster. His daughter Sloane was 16 like me, but from a planet where people send cars to pick up their kids from school. I met her because she was trying not to cry on a bench outside the paddock, and Rusty shoved his head under her hand, like he'd been hired to break the ice. "Rough day?" I asked. She snorted, wiped her eyes, said her dad cared more about a car than dinner with her, then mentioned the Lynx GT. Midnight green, 1968, pretty enough to make you stand up straighter. Kept dying at minute 4 like clockwork. My mouth answered before my pride could stop it. That 4-minute mark meant the fuel rail temp crossed the line where the ECU yanked timing like a panicked lifeguard, probably because somebody flashed a show-off tune to make it sound mean on camera, while a return line got routed through a heat pocket. She looked at me like I'd said the secret word. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who listens," I said, and Rusty sneezed like a drum fill. Yeah, that happened. She walked me through a service gate, while a man with a clipboard argued about which brand of water looked fancier in photos. Inside the garage was a cathedral. Stainless benches, torque wrenches like scalpels, a floor you could eat off without losing your appetite, and men in matching shirts orbiting that lynx like priests around an altar. I put my hand on the fender the way you touch a sleeping animal. There, in the breath before the stall, the note that said, "Hot fuel, bad path, trapped heat." I slid under, found a return line stretched across a belly pan, like a gift wrap ribbon, a shiny heat shield where a simple baffle should have lived, and an ECU tune that smelled like cologne, loud, expensive wrong. I came up fast and nearly bumped into the cologne himself. Colton. Tired eyes behind the posture. Next to him, the crew chief, Gabe Morrow, with a smile that never got to the eyes. "Who is this?" he said like I was a puddle. "She's with me," Sloane said, chin up. "She listens." Colton studied me like a mountain looks at a climber. "We're busy," he said polite, like you're polite to a raccoon in the kitchen. "If you'll let me, I'll try," I said, and it came out like I'd been saving those words for the moment my life could hear them. "Not for free," he said automatically. "For a chance," I said, and the room held its breath. Gabe snorted, called me a hobbyist, told me they had professionals. I asked him how many times they'd tried the same 3 ideas in a different hat. Hose tune pump, while minute 4 kept laughing at them, and if maybe it wasn't 3 problems, maybe it was 1 problem wearing disguises. That landed. Colton checked the clock, the glass, the stakes, and said 5 minutes with Gabe watching me like a hawk. "I'm not the one who needs watching," I said, and Gabe's jaw jumped. Heat shield, out proper baffle. In return line rerouted where airflow lives, rail wrapped in something that actually works instead of whatever looks fast in catalogs. ECU flashed back to the quiet file the tuner hid like a guilty conscience. I didn't talk while I worked. My dad would have smacked me upside the head for breaking concentration. I just breathed and counted, and asked the anxious kid in the corner to pass the exact wrench I needed, because he knew every drawer, and nobody else knew his name. Minute 4 came and went, and the idle note stayed right where it belonged. Minute 8, and Colton put a hand on the fender like you pat a horse that doesn't want to throw you anymore. "A deal's a deal," I said, pretending my hands weren't shaking. He slid 200s on the bench and said he'd get me a ride wherever I was sleeping. I took the cash because pride doesn't keep you fed, but the way it was offered, like charity wrapped in power, stung worse than a slap. Next morning, the lynx coughed on camera and quit with smoke like a magician's trick gone wrong. Lower thirds screamed, "Curse continues," and the voice on the stream tried not to laugh. I watched from a diner stool while Rusty herded bacon. My flip phone buzzed, Sloane's number, and she said I needed to get back now Gabe was telling her dad I'd sabotaged the engine to make myself look smart, and Colton was angry enough to believe anything. "If it were you, what would you have done?" I went back. Security tried to block me until Sloane came flying with a pass, and the look rich kids get when they realize the walls were built around them too. In the garage, Colton stood over the lynx like a judge, Gabe held the room like a preacher, and I walked past both to the car because the car would tell me the truth. Coil lead with a slit hidden under heat shrink. Idle safe load, deadly. ECU flashed again. Checksum didn't match the file I'd loaded last night. "That's not an accident, that's a signature. Someone made 3 changes," I said, holding up the files like exhibits. "All in the places I touched yesterday. If you wanted to frame me, you'd do exactly this." Gabe laughed too loud, called the logs unreliable, called me reckless. "Security cameras went down at 1:22 a.m. for 19 minutes, I said, ticking the time off on my fingers. "Pull the badge report. Let's see who came through at 1:24. Somebody put it on the big screen. It bloomed like a confession. 24 Morrow G. 137 Morrow G. 141. Facilities override. Gabe's color drained so fast it made a sound. "Glitch," he shouted, not looking at the screen. "Scanner's been weird all week." "Funny how it loves you back," I said, and Sloane made a noise that might have been a laugh if the room wasn't bleeding. Twist. The kind that flips your stomach and your story. Colton didn't argue, didn't posture, just called security, told them to escort Gabe out, then turned to me and asked if I could fix it in time to race. 40 minutes, I said, if everyone stops fighting me and does exactly what I say. He nodded once. That's all. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. I split orders small and put them in specific mouths. Anxious kid with pianist hands on delicate connectors. Tattoo guy on fuel drain. Sloane running like her sneakers were on fire. And I worked counting my breath, hearing my dad loading the right map, regrounding every ground like it owed me rent. The engine lit, held sang, and we rolled to the grid under a sky that couldn't pick a mood. In the paddock, Money strolled around dressed as people. Dante Vega, all red suit and borrowed swagger, swaggered over and called me a mascot. I told him his mechanic had dropped his sense of shame in Gabe's pocket and forgot to pick it up. Colton gave me a look that said, "Don't poke the bear," then grinned in my headset anyway when the green flag dropped and the lynx came alive like it had been waiting its whole life to be allowed to breathe. We started P13 because morning disasters come with taxes. Lap 2, we were 10th. Lap 5, we were in the middle of a pack that moves like a single animal, and I was counting in Colton's ear. 2 degrees hotter left rear than right shave 10 feet off your break point into 6, give it back on exit. Don't fight her, dance with her. Dante tried to kiss our rear quarter panel like a bully. With good hair. Colton caught it. I told him to breathe the throttle like a candle. You're not sure you want to blow out. And the link settled. A sensor tried to dump us into limp mode. I'd wired a manual bypass because I expect bad weather on sunny days. Blue toggle left, trust me, engine took a grateful gulp. We climbed to 5th on rhythm, to 3rd on stubbornness, and then it was us and Dante Bayford's little grandstand standing on tiptoes. Last lap, side by side, 3 places where side by side is a bad plan, final straight. And Dante had us by a nose because money buys pixels on a stopwatch, and we weren't going to beat him with speed. Turn 16, I said he brakes at the cone because he learned it like a lullaby. Count 3 heartbeats after you want to, and don't think about cameras. Think about your dad's pickup at the end of your street. How do you know that story? He asked, voice tight. You told it to an empty garage last night, I said, and I was there listening. He waited, the heartbeats went in too hot, and exactly right, and we beat Dante by a door handle. Maybe less. I didn't hear the crowd. I heard Rusty bark. I heard myself not crying. For once. On the podium, cameras tried to eat me, and Colton did the thing you've probably seen in the clip, pulled me up and said into every lens, "This isn't my win, this is hers." In the quiet after the noise, he set an envelope on the bench, called it a job, an apartment, a way to finish school without asking permission. I could say I didn't cry. That'd be a lie. If you'll let me, I'll try, I said. And that's how Act 2 started. The part everyone thinks is a montage, but is really a grind. You can dress a stray, but it still flinches when a hand comes up fast. Tucker Ramirez, the foreman, put me on oil changes like I was shadowing. I did the work right anyway, told him a practice motor had a worn cam lobe because the rhythm above my head had a wrong tap every 8. He told me I was hearing ghosts. 2 days later, we had a paperweight where a V8 used to be, and he didn't apologize. He just stopped calling me kid like it was a joke. Respect is quiet when it's real, you know. Gabe didn't stay gone. Blocked numbers. A jimmied door. Nothing taken. Worse. Old fear snapped on like a light you can't reach. I disappeared for 3 nights. Habit, muscle memory. Rusty and me by the river counting freight cars and excuses. Sloan found me with a GPS collar on Rusty because Colton's security thinks like pilots, and she said the line that broke me in the right direction. You don't have to be alone to be safe. And then showed me the footage of the break-in, and then Colton showed me the arrest report, and I came back. Fear turned to fuel. I poured it into a 1971 caliber R fastback sitting in the warehouse under dust and broken promises. On paper, it was scrap to me. It had bones that wanted to run. I sketched variable compression on the fly, hybridized induction rules that didn't know how to say no because they'd never been asked. Entry fee for Redwood is $250,000, Colton said, eyes doing math and history. Prize is 5, I said, so we win. We built a car out of weekends' arguments and cheap coffee. Sarah from simulation turned the physics in my head into lines on a screen. Tucker taught me paperwork because talent without receipts gets stolen. The anxious kid with pianist hands became a wiring surgeon, and kids from the neighborhood started showing up with notebooks like mine and hope like it had a deadline. We didn't shut the door. We put their names on parts and paychecks. At Redwood, a regulator with a too white smile tried to protest a dozen things until he realized standards didn't care about his donor list. Green flag. 40 cars. We started P28 because there's always a tax. We climbed because patience beats panic, And because preparation looks like luck to people who didn't watch you bleed for it at 3 a.m. Then the pit stop. 11 seconds turned into 17 and a half. And I knew before the gun spun down that Pete, one of our newer guys, had taken money from a man with a nice watch and no soul. Security pulled him. My stomach tried to leave my body, Sarah said. We were 12 seconds behind the math, and I flipped the reserve I hadn't told anyone about. Because if I had, they'd tell me not to. Blue switch, trust me. And the ghost dropped a register and grew teeth. P13, P9, P6. With 5 to go, we were third. With 2 to go, security said Gabe was in the building. I stayed in my chair, because that's what he wanted me to abandon. And on the white flag, I told Colton to break 5 meters later than his bones believed, and to let the suspension I'd taught to hold do its job. And we beat a legend named Jackson Price by 4 thousandths. People say you can't see 4 thousandths. You can feel it, though, in your scars. Here's where it gets messy in the way real life does. The boardroom clapped and then tried to put a price on me like I was a tool with a SKU. A talk show host asked if I blamed poverty or personal choices, and I said, I blame people who saw me and turned away. There's a difference. The internet split me into parts. Prodigy PR stunt too young, hope hype. While the kids who started showing up at our side door just wanted a workbench and a reason to come back tomorrow. We started the Brooks Fellowship in a corner of the shop with 2 soldering irons and a coffee maker that didn't judge. Someone poured acid on the ghost's block at midnight. Cameras caught a hooded figure who wasn't Gabe. And I sat on the floor and laid my hand on what used to be an engine and didn't cry because the well was dry. Then I stood up and said, they think destroying 1 engine stops me. They don't understand. I carry 100 in my head. And Tucker grunted, and Sarah smiled with her eyes, and Sloane squeezed my hand, and we went back to work. So let me ask you straight. Do you think that's fair, that you can be right in front of people and still be invisible until your hands make something they can't ignore? And even then, they want to own it, rename it, sell it back to you with interest. Who deserves the credit? The man who paid for the lights, or the kid who refused to go out when the switch flipped off? How much do you owe the system that almost spit you out? What does forgiveness look like when the damage was the point? If it were you, would you take the check and the quiet? Or would you open the door and let a dozen kids who look like yesterday you walk into the noise? I still carry my dad's old socket in my backpack. Not because I need it, because it reminds me that the first job you get is the one you give yourself when you decide you're done being who they told you you were. On good days, I hear him in the shop. On bad days, I talk to machines until they talk back, and that is enough. We're building cars that shouldn't exist on paper, and kids who absolutely should exist in rooms like this, and often don't. We win sometimes. We lose sometimes. We keep listening. If you stayed with me to the end, here's your part. Drop in the comments what you think the real crime is here. The sabotage, the gatekeeping, the way we treat talent without an address, or the temptation to turn a person into a headline and call it help. Tell me if you've seen someone get dismissed for their clothes, their age, their zip code, and then watched them rewrite the room. Argue with me if you need to. Name the invisible genius you pass on your way to work. And if this hit you in the gut, like a hand reaching up stick around subscribe, share it with somebody who needs a shot of courage and leave your line in big letters so the rest of us can carry it too. If you'll let me, I'll try.